As Elysium opens, we're introduced to Max, played by Maxwell Perry Cotton as a child, a young orphan living in the future slums of Los Angeles, looking up into the sky towards a massive toroidal space habitat. This is Elysium, a technologically advanced space orbital where the uber-rich live in opulent luxury, surrounded by technologies that keep them disease-free, secure, and deeply pampered. In contrast, the 99% who are left on Earth live in dirt, poverty, and misery, working long, hard hours under the watchful eye of zero-tolerance autonomous robot law enforcement. Max's dream, and one he shares with his childhood sweetheart Frey, played by Valentina Giron, is to make enough money to move to Elysium. But like so many dreams, it fades into the harsh reality of a life trapped in poverty as he grows up. Here we fast forward to a grown-up Max, played by Max Damon. Max is still living in the slums of LA. Since we saw him as a child, he's dabbled in some less than illegal activities, but is now legitimately employed and is working long, hard hours for little pay for the company Armadine. This is the company that supplies much of Elysium's technological needs, together with the AI-based security robots that keep order on Earth. Max is going straight when we catch up with him, but an offhand comment to a security robot leads to him being mercilessly beaten and ending up in hospital with a broken wrist. Here, he's reunited with a grown-up Frey, played by Alice Braga. Frey is now working as a doctor, and as we later discover, has problems of her own. Max wants to renew their relationship, but Frey brushes him off and discourages him from getting involved in her own complicated life. Once his wrist has been seen to, Max is required to visit his parole officer, another humorless autonomous robot, and once again his flippant attitude gets him into trouble. Having finally got through his parole meeting, he arrives late to work and is threatened with dismissal for being tardy. Fortunately for him, Max gets off with a warning and he goes back to making robots designed to suppress the poor and pamper the rich. But when a glitch in the manufacturing process threatens production, he's forced to take a dangerous shortcut to fix it, and receives a lethal dose of radiation in the process. Following the incident, the Armadine robot patches Max up, gives him a bottle of pills to counter the radiation's effects, and calmly tells him that in 5 days' time, he'll die. Meanwhile, Armadine's CEO, John Carlyle, played by William Fichtner, is horrified by the thought of having a sick and incapacitated worker on the premises, and responds with a less than caring, "Does his skin fall off or something? I don't want to replace the bedding, just get him out." Carlyle is a citizen of Elysium, and the person who originally designed the station's operating system, although because of his position with Armadine, he spends a lot of time commuting between Earth and the orbital. As Max's really bad day plays out, we discover that Elysium's defense secretary Delacour, played by Jodie Foster, is conspiring with Carlyle to oust the orbital's current president and install herself in this position of ultimate power. Carlyle, it transpires, wrote the operating system for all of Elysium, and is still able to hack it. This is a system that defines and oversees all of the orbital's operational and social functions, including who is a citizen and therefore has access to Elysium's facilities and who is not. It also determines who has the authority to govern the orbital and who occupies the highest positions of power, including that of president. Because of this jaw-dropping level of vulnerability in the technology, Carlyle is able to write a patch that reconfigures the system, replacing the current president with Delacour. Carlyle configures the patch while on Earth and securely saves it in his brain using a neural interface. This is, it has to be said, a technology of convenience that supports the movie's narrative, but otherwise makes little sense. And because the patch is so valuable, he adds a lethal security lock which will end up killing anyone who tries to steal it and run it. Meanwhile, Max is dying and he's angry. His only hope of surviving is to get to one of the medical pods on Elysium, and so he makes a deal with old partner in crime Spider, played by Wagner Moura, to smuggle him up to the orbital on one of Spider's illegal immigrant runs. Spider agrees to help Max, but at a price. First, he must agree to steal something from an Elysium citizen that will enable Spider to more successfully circumvent the orbital's defenses. Max agrees, but on one condition. He'll only participate in the theft if the mark is Carlisle. Fortunately, an opportunity to jump Carlisle arises almost immediately. In the ensuing hijacking, Carlisle is killed, and Max ends up with his Elysium reboot patch in his brain, little realizing at the time how dangerous it is. Spider, however, understands all too well what he's stolen, and that this is a piece of code that, if executed correctly, could make Elysium and everything it represents accessible to anyone on Earth. In his mind, it's the key to wiping out the social inequity that Elysium and its medical technology in particular represents, and one that could level the social and technological playing field between the orbital and the Earth. But there's a problem. If Spider runs the patch, Max dies. Incensed that Max has interfered with her plans, Delacour dispatches Kruger, played by Sharlto Copley, a psychopathic mercenary, to track him down and reclaim the patch. Max evades Kruger, but sustains serious injuries in the process, and this leads him back to Frey. As Max persuades Frey to treat him, he learns her daughter is dying of leukemia, and just like Max, her only hope is to get to Elysium. Unfortunately, Kruger discovers Frey's connection with Max, and he kidnaps her and her daughter in an attempt to bring him in. Kruger is well aware of what's in Max's head, and is formulating his own plan for how he could use the patch himself. But for this, he needs Max alive. Having little choice, Max gives himself up and persuades Kruger and his crew to shuttle him, Frey, and her daughter to Elysium by threatening to destroy the patch if they don't. And as they're transported up to the orbital, Spider tracks them and follows behind with his own crew. This being a sci-fi action film, lots of fighting, blood, and grisly deaths follow. Eventually, though, Frey gets her daughter to one of Elysium's medical units, only to hit a seemingly insurmountable problem. Because Frey's daughter isn't a registered citizen of Elysium, the machine refuses to treat her. The only solution is for Max to use the patch to reconfigure Elysium systems so they recognize her as a citizen, but the only way he can do this is to be killed in the process. Max insists that Spider make the necessary modifications to the patch and sacrifices himself so that Frey's daughter can live. But it's not just Frey's daughter who benefits. Spider has reconfigured the patch to reclassify everyone on Earth as a citizen of Elysium. And so as Max dies, the 99% finally have access to all the privileges of the 1% that Elysium represents. As the change in citizenship registers, the orbital's autonomous systems realize there's a whole planet full of citizens who are sick and suffering below it, and they commit Elysium's extensive resources, which inexplicably include hundreds of medical relief vessels, to assist them. Through Max's sacrifice, the technologies previously used to benefit the rich at the expense of the poor are made available to everyone, and social equity is restored.